My presentation is going to be on oppression and empowerment. This is the key learning that I took from this course. Empowerment can be both defined as a goal and a process, and it involves an action component. So once you're critically aware of your oppression, you are able to be liberated and create change. Empowerment involves both an individual and collective process. Paulo Freire came up with this concept of conscientization. So this is where people become aware and then resist social, political, and economic conditions that oppress people. Critical consciousness is essentially an educational process that helps individuals fight for change. So Paulo Freire developed the term critical consciousness as a way to spread educational pedagogy to liberate society from systematic inequality. The purpose of my creative piece is to let people think of their oppression, make them aware, and hopefully find a way for them to liberate themselves and find a way to liberate the larger society and fight against oppression.
Oppression is the manner of someone in a position of authority using their power in a cruel and unjust way. Arguably, everyone in this world is oppressed by the institutions around them, and only the 1% that control those institutions are truly free from it.
One way oppression works is through social institutions, when one group, the dominant group, has power and control over other groups. Oppression is woven in the fabrics in our education system, judicial system, policing, policy, healthcare, and many other social institutions in our society.
So oppression is a power exploitation by dominant groups over target groups through many different variables such as race, class, gender, sexual orientation, or religion, to name a few. This power exploitation leads to target groups having more limited rights to education, employment, healthcare, and basic rights and freedoms.
I would say I'm oppressed by just the way I look. I am African, so the color of my skin. I wear hijab and I'm Muslim, and that's very apparent as it shows. I'm a woman as well, so that kind of adds to my oppression already. I'm the only Black Muslim female in an agency with 50 people, and that says a lot.
One way that I feel oppressed is through the workspace environment, when I'm constantly reminded that I am a person of color, through remarks about my credibility, my character, even remarks about my hair.
Being a person of color, being a woman, and being a part of a religion that is heavily scrutinized by the world, it is kind of hard for me to not be oppressed and to not feel oppressed.
Being a Black Muslim woman, I can relate to quite a few different target groups. Some ways that I face oppression would be having false labels placed on me based on my appearance, whether people assume that my religion oppresses me or that I'm reserved or submissive without even having had a conversation with me.
The ways that I can liberate myself is through power and holding places of power and position in our society, getting into spaces of law, engineering, healthcare, policies, and even our court system. When people of color and marginalized people hold places of power, they can liberate others by lifting them up and opening spaces for other people of color to enter.
I think that the society that we live in today is able to move past this and is able to work with this, but it is a term that is almost too broad and too wide to fully be able to liberate ourselves from. I think whenever there's going to be a position of power, there will always be a position for someone to be oppressed by that power. I think in our society, it's growingly becoming a little bit more inclusive and people are a little bit more aware of the things around them.
It's important for us as a society to recognize that privilege exists and to be able to have open dialogue and difficult conversations about race, religion, and identity. And I think that we also need to come to an understanding that systematic injustice hurts everyone. I also believe that the power of representation is significant, especially to marginalized youth, and that being able to see people who look like you, either in the media or holding positions of power in the government or education, is really important because it makes us feel as though we are important and that we have a voice.
The purpose of this creative piece was to get the conversation started about oppression and how we can self-reflect and in turn learn how we're oppressed, learn how to resist it, and learn how to create social change. So as a social worker, I learned that both at an individual level and collective level, it's very important to advocate for social change, to make sure that people realize that they're oppressed. And from that oppression, we can liberate not only ourselves, but the whole community. And if not completely demolish oppression, but at least minimize it and make a difference.